This is 10 tips I wish I knew when I started cycle racing. Tip number 10. Don't judge people by how big their legs are. Sure, you may be attracted to them, you do you. In all seriousness, I used to go to a race, look around, and I'd be like, geez, them legs are big. I've got absolutely no chance against Quadzilla over there. That is going to be impossible to sprint past him or even get past him. He must have a really high FTP. And it turns out half an hour later, they may have pulled out the race. They may be shattered. They may be having a bad day. They may not be drafting and being efficient. They may just be going for it. So if someone's got big legs in the peloton and you're at the start line, you're looking around, you feel like the unfittest there, just ignore it, ignore them, you do you. 9 times out of 10, you'll probably surprise yourself. Likewise, if someone's got skinny legs, and you think, oh gosh, they may just be off. So out of these 10 tips that I'm giving you is do not judge people on the size of their legs. Tip number 9. Now this one's a bit of a weird one. I noticed when I started racing, crashes would only seem to happen when the race slows down. Like, how are we going slow? How are we crashing? So what I found is, when it's going fast, everything strings out. When you go slow, everything bunches together, people slow down, people stop paying attention. And it always happens when you're going in a straight line as well. So one of the things I wish I knew was definitely pay attention when it slows down, okay? Because people have sips on bottles, they look about, they talk to people. So yeah, that's one thing I wish I knew. Tip number 8. Attack where it's most unappealing. So if you're going up a hill and you think to yourself, gosh, I would really hate if someone went for it right now, that's a sign it's a probably really good place for you to go for it, because that's how everyone else feels. If you go, they don't want to be the ones chasing you down. Also, if you're attacking into a headwind and everyone else is just there, they're like, I don't want to be the one giving people a draft whilst they chase you down. Most likely, you're going to get a good gap on the peloton. So one thing I've learned is definitely attack into headwinds. That is amazing, and it works pretty much every time, especially on really windy courses. Number 7, try and stay near the front of the peloton. When you're at the back, you're having to deal with people surging. There's more people in front of you that can muck up. And that kind of links to one of my previous points, is if you're near the front of the peloton, there's less people to make mistakes in front of you. So I found in a few of the races I was in, if I was further to the back and an accident happened, I was on the wrong side of a split. If you're near the front, most likely the chances of accidents are going to be behind you. Also, going around corners and surging out of them is a lot smoother when you're at the front of the peloton, whereas when you're at the back, you just waste loads of energy. It's really inefficient. Also, if you're near the back and a break goes and there's 40 riders, you may not be able to see that happen. I've been in loads of races where the fields have been huge. I just haven't seen it go. It's been quite far away because the field's so big. Out of sight, out of mind. And then I never realized by the end of the race, we were racing for 10th place. Tip number 6. If you want to bridge over to a split that's happened up the road or the breakaway, what you want to do is you want to sprint off and try not to drag the whole peloton with you. So I did this in one of my first few races. We was at Abingdon at the beginning of the year in February. I was a Cat 4, I think it was my 2nd or 3rd race. The peloton had split into 2 groups. The other group was so far ahead and I thought, oh my God, I want to be in that group. I don't want them to get away, otherwise my race is over. 20 up there, 20 here. There's no chance of getting points. So I thought, right, I'm gonna put in the effort and get up there. And what did I do? I just did a very steady paced, powerful TT style effort. And when we caught up to them about 2 or 3 minutes later, everyone was on my wheel. Yeah, mate, cheers, epic pull, bro. Oh, you saved my race. And I was like, I'm really happy with that. I was like a bit of a hero, you know what I mean? But actually, looking back on it, it was the worst thing you could do, because if I just sprinted off, created a gap on the peloton I was in, then I'm not dragging half the peloton up with me. If I get up the next group up the road, I've got more chance of getting points or winning with that 20 rather than pulling up 20 and creating a group of 40. Okay, so remember, when you want to bridge over to a group of people or a rider, sprint off, get over to them as quickly as you can and try to make sure you avoid getting people on your wheel. Tip number 5. What was number 5? I forgot. You need repeatability. It's not a TT for a 10-mile TT or a 25-mile TT where it's a steady state effort. It's a lot of VO2 max bursts, loads of surges. You can see it in the data file here. You can see all the spiky efforts there is. People attacking, you're trying to get onto them. You're sprinting out of corners, you're trying to put the hair on people. It's not a steady state effort. So if you're training and you're training for a crit race, make sure you're getting in loads of like VO2 max efforts, little sprints, seated sprints, things that are above your FTP and out of your comfort zone. And repeat them and repeat them and repeat them. And then you'll have some idea what it would be like to be like in a crit race. Tip number 4. Ignore your heart rate. I've been in loads of races. I have a super high heart rate. You may have seen it in some of the videos. So I'm like 180, 190, almost 200, and I hit 200 in sprints. Like pretty much every sprint I've ever done, I've been at 200. One thing to remember is if you're dying, you don't need to look down at your computer head unit, read it and say, just to confirm with you, you're dying. Because if that happens, is it going to affect you positively? Probably not. So whenever I've looked down at my head unit and I've seen a really high number, I'm like, that's no good. I'm not going to last much longer. But sure enough, I end up lasting the race. So try to ignore the heart rate. I've seen loads of racers at the end of races say to me, oh my God, my heart rate was so high, I had to just back off. But I'm like thinking to myself, oh my God, if you were going for another 5 or 10 more seconds, you would have broken everyone and you would have got away possibly. So ignore your heart rate, just get on with it. You don't need to be told that you're dying when you feel like you're dying. Be honest, go by your power and so on, in my opinion. Obviously, your opinion may be different, but I just think I've never looked at my heart rate and think, wow, that's really helpful. It's really helped me with my race today. I've never had that happen, okay? Number 3. Delicious. God, I love eating. Stick in the draft, because if you don't, you will get dropped quicker than When you're not in the draft, you are wasting energy. If you've watched my Guildford Town Centre crit, luckily my seat post broke, and I say the word luckily because I was about to get dropped. If you're watching the race, you'll see that I wasn't in the draft at all, and people are just going past me. And I think it was the occasion, having loads of people around, my family was there watching. You know, everything I'd learnt just went out the window and I was just trying to go for it. But just expect to get dropped at some point in racing. It's inevitable, it's gonna happen. Happens all the time. In fact, you'll probably get dropped a few times before you even win a race or even podium. If you do come out of the draft and you get dropped, give it one big effort to try and get back on, because otherwise it's the end of your race. So you might as well do your sprint there and then, see if you can get back on, and if you can, then win-win and just stay behind people and recover. But yeah, stick in the draft. Tip number 2. Practice cornering. Be on Zwift all the time, or you may just be riding on straight roads a lot. And a lot of crits, they can be quite technical with tight corners. It pays off for you to be able to corner really nicely, because that means if someone else is cornering badly and you can take the corner without having to surge at the end of it, you're going to save so much energy. When I first started the crit racing, I was absolutely terrible at cornering. I would end up doing like leaning off my bike, like I think I'm Carl Fogarty in like a super bike race, or you may be more familiar with like someone like Scott Redding. But leaning off your bike on a road bike doesn't make it corner very well at all. It took me a while to find out and try and figure it out. It took me a lot of practice. What I figured out was if I was turning right and I pushed my right arm almost straight and bring my left hand towards to tip the bike over, not necessarily myself, I could go around the corner super sharp, and that made a complete huge difference to how I can corner. And I was just keeping my weight slightly off the saddle when doing it, rather than hanging off the saddle on the inside. One thing to practice, which really helped, I found as well, was go slow in a straight line and don't pedal, and you'll start coming to a stop. If you was trying to accelerate whilst using your handlebars without doing your pedaling, I found I'm tipping the bike, and if I wanted to corner right now, I could corner really fast. So maybe practice doing that. I found that helped quite a lot. And whether that's correct, I don't know. If that's a crit, I'm only a Cat 3, I've only been racing for a year. But I found when I did that technique, I could corner super fast. Number 1. Just be patient and don't get frustrated. It happens all the time, especially me. I'm like super competitive. It took me 18 races to get my 12 points to get out of Cat 4, because that's how many points you need. And every week I would write a race report for Reading Cycling Club, and every week it'd be like, oh, guess who didn't get in the points again? Me. And the frustration grew and grew and grew. There was one race where I was like about to come second place, someone cut me up, and it took me another 10 races to get my 12 points. If it wasn't for that race, then I would have got to Cat 3 real quick. But listen, be patient, enjoy the process. You'll end up going up a category when you deserve to, when you're actually fit enough, and when everything all starts clicking. Until that happens, just enjoy being in Cat 4, for example, because it'll probably get to a stage where you might end up at Cat 3 or Cat 2 or even Cat 1 or Elites or whatever, when podium is going to be impossible. So enjoy racing, and that's the whole point of it. I would love it if you could comment below on any tips you have for other races, what you learned in your first year. That'd be really grateful for people if you could make comments below. If you want to watch some of the videos on this channel, the Guildford crit that I'm posting down here, so one thing I learned in that race was to stick on a bloody wheel. Do you know what I mean? Watch that video, watch how to do it wrong, and watch what happens.